Okay. It's 6:30. All members are present tonight. I'll call this meeting to order. If you can stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Lynn,
Second.
second by Jennifer. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Agenda is approved. Comments and requests from visitors? Okay. No visitors or comments? Requests. Moving on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda or anything that needs to get pulled out?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Lynn,
Second.
second by Kara. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Discussion items. Item A, one-to-one initiative.
Mr. Wiesenberg, at our last meeting during the work session, we talked through our goals, and one of our goals that we're bringing forward tonight is our one-to-one initiative. So that is putting a device in each one of our teachers and each one of our students' hands, preliminary K through 12. At that time, the desire was to look into whether or not we can do this yet this upcoming year. And so I went back and I discussed the desire, which I share as well, to have that, to get that accomplished with both Brian Kowski, our technology director, and Beth, our finance guru. Had some conversation with them, shared back with you that, you know, those that we do share the desire, but it would be very difficult for us to do that in this upcoming school year. And so I invited both Brian and Beth here if you had any questions for them in that regards, specific questions that they might have a better chance of answering than I do.
When's the soonest date? If we're going to focus on solutions, what would be the soonest date students we could start rolling out devices to students based on what you looked into?
Fiscally, I'll just talk about the fiscal part of it. If we tried to do student devices this year, we need about $300,000 so that we wouldn't be cutting into fund balance. And when we figured that out, that would be using like $150,000 of our one-time CARES Act funding to put all of it into technology and not really have anything left over for any other COVID-related items that might be coming up.
So we talked at our last meeting about borrowing from ourselves because we know we've got the technology
Budget?
Yes, thank you. How does that play into it?
So we could do that. We could like dip into a line of credit that we have at Granite Community Bank, but you're going to dip into fund balance about $300,000 if we do that, and it's going to take at least 4 years to recover that much, which is really scary for me. It's the position I would not want to put the district in when the state next year could possibly give us 0 and 0 on that basic ed formula. So it makes me extremely nervous.
So explain to me where the money's going to come from, if it's next year or the following year.
So the way we have it balanced out is we've got a lease term that is ending for fiscal year 22. So when that drops off, then it's about $180,000 that we can put towards that first technology purchase. And then the way we've got it set up, the residuals that you get back when you sell back the technology
So that
also play into that fund balance part.
So that lease is going to come up regardless, and so we know we're going to have that $180,000. So if we borrow that from our own fund balance, knowing we were going to put it back.
It takes 4 years.
Yeah.
To get back to it because of pushing that really giant purchase of student devices into this year, it skews our whole fiscal plan. So
Yeah.
it's not like we can fix it in 1 year. It's gonna take 4 years to pay back our fund balance.
But is that the right thing to do for the students that are here now?
Yeah, I mean, the part that obviously we didn't know how COVID was gonna affect us. And so having one-to-one and being prepared to handle what we might have to work through in the next year and a half might put us in a situation where we don't want to be that. So I understand, you need to let us know where that's at. But I think the question we had is it still important to us, even if it takes 4 years, and I don't know that I fully understand that we have the 180,000 next year and we have that money faster than that, why it takes the 4 years, but I'm not that smart.
Can you, sorry. I'll let you
Well, no, I'm just gonna say, I think that's the question I wanna hear from the rest of the board is, we know it's not ideal, but we also know that we could have a situation over the next 2 years where our kids are really gonna be relying on technology to get through whatever it is. And maybe it doesn't go out that way, but at least we're doing something to try. And I guess that's all I would ask, to kind of hear what the rest of us, have to say, because I could probably be swayed either way. In the
I
sense
would
of-
tell you right now, I would so strongly advise you against running against fund balance right now. It's a really, really scary time. I would anticipate in the next biennium that the state is gonna give us 0 and 0 in gen ed aid, and we have contracts to settle. And it is not ideal to go into negotiating contracts with 0 and 0 and having no fund balance as a cushion.
Okay, I think the other thing we were questioning is, are there purchases that we're making out of the capital fund that could be traded or put off, roof projects, carpeting, replacing lawnmower, any of those type things that could be put off, extended another year, and use some money out of the capital outlay fund?
No, right now, the way we have capital set up, it's set up to cover your English and math cycle when they come up. So if you borrow from that fund, and then we have to pay it back when we get to that cycle year, there won't be any funding to make those purchases either.
Okay.
So, my general sentiment is, the original track that we were on was fine, but COVID changed everything. And so just taking a big step back and looking at the big picture and saying, okay, what's best for our students, given the unpredictability of next year. And so in that, it's us exploring it and asking you questions. For me, I still don't quite understand how we pay for it. How do we pay for one-to-one as planned, and how do we pay for one-to-one accelerated? And so there's a lease that's coming up, and we have the technology referendum, and then we also have technology we include in the budget. So how do those things work?
I don't know if Brian can explain it better than I can when we start talking about how you do the timing of it, but it really is the residuals that you get when you sell back the other machines, and it's the fact of pushing all those student ones that far forward. So even though that lease is up and we have $180,000 in budget next year that we're gonna use to make the technology purchase, when we shove everything together in a 4-year cycle instead of offsetting it, we end up with really big years that look terrible, and it takes us that long to catch up. Like, we have really planned this
You're talking about
fiscally to
computer
be
purchases.
responsible.
I don't know that was clear. You're talking about how you guys resell the computers back and
Yes.
and buy them.
Yeah, and when you get
That
those
wasn't-
funds
I don't
back.
know that we understood that when you first started. I mean, you now made it a little more clear of what you're talking about, this 4-year cycle.
Or replacement cycle.
Right.
Yeah.
So Brad?
Yes.
Kids, what's best for kids? I guess I really want to hear what you have to say. I get, and that's what Beth needs to do, is tell us, the dark days could be coming and we can't afford to spend $300,000 out of a $20 million budget That scares me more than this whole fund balance thing, is the fact that we can't come up with $300,000 in
Yeah,
a $20 million budget. Are you
Right.
freaking kidding me?
yeah.
There's nobody in our community right now that would say that's craziness. So if we feel our communities want to do this, I can't believe that we can't come up with something better in how we would do that, because crisis could be way worse than trying to come up with $300,000. So that scares the living heck out of me.
All right, so number one, you've heard Beth's financial piece of it. It doesn't make sense to dip into your fund balance when we do not even have the required fund balance as our policy says in place right now. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, we are not ready infrastructure-wise. So let's say we bring in 2,300 devices, and Brian can speak to this. We do not have the wireless capacity for our kids to be hitting our wireless system should we actually get the devices on hand and be here.
But was that part of the 300,000? I thought when I read something, I thought getting ready infrastructure as well as equipment would cost an additional 300,000.
Okay, so here's where we're at infrastructure-wise. We have a wireless plant in place right now that provides coverage across all the campuses in the district, and it works well enough for what we have. To bring in the additional devices after the wireless site survey that we had this past year, we identified gaps in that coverage that need to be improved. And to that, it's about $110,000 to do that. That's to getting, we have, aging infrastructure that needs to be replaced as a part of that process. We also need to add infrastructure to assist in that process. Part of what we've budgeted now to do this cycle is this year we're finishing up some wired infrastructure that needs to be replaced back from the construction project 10 years ago. That's going in CSE this year on this fiscal cycle. That's being partly funded by E-rate. E-rate is a federal program through the Schools and Libraries program that gives us money back on technology purchases and infrastructure. That's a rebate of about 50%. If we do the wireless infrastructure this year, which would be a requirement to do this, we will not get E-rate dollars because it is past the E-rate filing window. Part of this budgeting that Beth and I have worked on includes assuming we are doing the Wi-Fi in the next fiscal cycle, which includes getting 50% of those dollars back in E-rate funding. So to address that, that's part of it right there, and that's part of the big hole we dip ourselves into, because if we buy the wireless infrastructure this year, we cannot tap those E-rate dollars.
So I guess back to my original question, is that $110,000 part of the $300,000 that was quoted?
The negative balance we'd run?
Yeah.
It would.
Is the
Yes.
$300,000 the total package if we decided to go now?
It's not $300,000 to do all this. We go negative $300,000.
Right, that's what I mean.
So I mean,
the
we'll be,
negative 300, that money that we would have to come up with, the extra $300,000 that we would have to come up with, does that include the 110,000, everything that we would need, the infrastructure and the equipment?
Yes.
So it's, I just don't, because it could be portrayed that you're saying it would be 300,000 plus 110,000, but 300,000 is the total.
as part of that $300,000 negative fund balance includes the money that it would take to improve the infrastructure. Now, that's just the fiscal side of it. From a logistical standpoint, we all know COVID has not been kind to everything. There is a significant lead time in technology coming out of China and the East. And right now, speaking with the vendor we work with on this, we have a minimum of a 70-day lead time on orders. Now, I don't know if that's changed since I've talked to them within the last week or so. So, I mean, today it could be a 65-day lead, it could be an 85-day lead. Point being is if we put in a PO tomorrow, expect it to take 70 days to get on site, and the vendor will not schedule because of that long lead time until we have the equipment, which means at least another couple months. So we, from an infrastructure standpoint, would not be ready for day one of school. And I am not comfortable. The big thing we need to keep in mind with this is a huge transformative undertaking, and for us to just say, well, we'll just ride the wave with what we got and throw it in there fiscally notwithstanding, this will probably fail technologically. It will not work well enough for it to meet the students and staff's needs in the classroom, and they'll say, fold them up, put them in your bag, we're not using them anymore, and we're going to stumble out of the gate.
Can you explain that? Why won't it work well?
because the Wi-Fi capacity will not be sufficient to handle the additional load of the couple thousand devices we're gonna put on it. They're just,
We just
Yeah,
said
that
of
just-
that 300,000, 110.
I am saying that on day one of school, that infrastructure will not be in place because we have a lead
Right,
time
so
to
go back
acquire
to
the
Jen's
hardware.
original question is, what's the earliest that we could do this successfully?
Yeah, like, I just wanna talk about solutions, like how are we gonna fix all this?
I mean,
how are we gonna do it fast?
money notwithstanding again, because I'm not the finance director, I would not be comfortable saying anything before the new year. Just because of lead times and everything.
So yeah, I just want to separate the two, because I think, again, we owe the public the explanation. We can't, you're saying we cannot do it before the beginning of the year, which, just from a logistics standpoint.
Right.
So let's separate those two, because they're two different things, because I think, you know, we're talking about the money part. I think if we really felt we could get it done, then we could really figure out how we could maybe solve the money part. But we led with the money part, trying to hope that we didn't get to the part, you know, that we just can't do it.
Right,
So-
I mean, you would take astronomical statistical anomalies to line up the stars just so to be like, oh, this fell into place, this is amazing. I mean, I've done enough projects to know new year. I mean, realistically speaking, to be comfortable to say, let's rock and roll, it would be new year.
So
Now,
should we plan
So
for
I guess
that?
my question would be, New Year is better than 2022?
Yeah, I like January, that sounds great.
And it's like when you set a goal, you know, you set the goal for the new year, and you're saying that, you know, all these things gotta line up, so there's a pretty good chance that it might end up not being until the end of next year. But if we shoot for the new year, we at least, you know, because if we don't shoot
Got a
for the
lot
new
of lead
year,
time.
we might shoot for the end of the year, and then pretty soon we're into the next year, and we're having this conversation about, you know, not starting the process.
well, I mean, everything, okay, so we've laid this out in a 3-year project. We're done with the first year, coming into our second year. Realistically, that's already a pretty accelerated timeline. In a district our size, it's very common for them to do rollouts in phases. So as an example, one of the things I came to Brad about when we were discussing this is pre-COVID, was to do like K-5 1 year, 6-8 another year, 9-12 another year, to phase these rollouts in, just to ensure that as we do roll it out, we can successfully support it, help teachers, help students be successful in the classroom. And in the conversation Brad and I had, that was not fast enough. We needed to be faster. Now again, this is pre-COVID. So I went back to the drawing board, spoke with Beth a little bit on that, and we decided we could make this work in a 1-year rollout. K-12, bang, rip the Band-Aid off and go. It's going to be a lot more challenging to be successful, but I believe we can do that. That's assuming we don't accelerate it even farther.
Why do we feel, or why are we feeling right now that it's going to be challenging? I mean, I don't know, I think we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting, but I think we've all experienced rollouts of new equipment or technology, and it didn't take a year to make it happen.
Depends on what you're rolling out. In this case, we're telling staff and students you're going to completely flip what you're doing. We're giving you a whole new means of doing your education on a day-to-day basis. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, both in the classroom and out of the classroom, that need to work, and we just need the time to make sure they're all ready to go.
Well, I understand the infrastructure part and the money part, but the kids have been using technology to get through the rest of the school year.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I buy that they can't catch on to how that's gonna go, because
And that's fine.
that's
I
what the
mean,
kids have been doing.
and-
So,
As well
and
as
again,
the
let's leave that out.
Teachers have done a ton in a really compressed, short period of time to adapt to new technology. So I feel like we need to give everybody a little bit more credit for,
Oh, I didn't hear Brian say that this teaching staff couldn't be ready. I didn't hear that at all. What I hear us saying is, if we want to do this right, okay, we have to do it the right way. And so we have to solve the infrastructure piece first. And then we have to be able to afford it. And I've given you numbers, Beth has given you numbers. It's definitely a risk to do it without having the financial support. Shannon, I understand what you say, how can we not find this in a $20 million budget? Well, Beth's prepared that budget for you last time at a work session meeting, and of that, we have a $170,000 cushion. I'm sorry, $160,000 cushion. That's not a lot of cushion. And,
Just depends what the crisis is and how important we think solving the
Right, I
crisis is.
think that's
And
why just.
so
That's why we're bringing it up, because I think when you look at parents and the struggles they went through that, you know, COVID put them through, to think about having to go online again and not us preparing to make it better, then we're not doing our job by asking the questions. So,
If we need to go COVID distance learning again, the process that we used this spring worked. We're more than capable of doing that again. And, I mean, well, my staff we've already got some plans, I mean, tentatively in place if we're on campus versus remote. We have plans to address both needs. We're not worried about that. We have the hotspots already in place. Actually, this time around, if we do go distance learning, we already have the hotspots. We're not waiting for the backlog of tens of thousands of dollars in back orders to come out. I mean, we actually let most of the families who need them just keep them over the summer.
So
Well,
are we
I
prepared
think we
though?
thought it went well, but we just think it could be better.
Yeah.
And that's a noble goal. I'm
I
not
think the
saying
other thing-
anybody's wrong for having that opinion.
Are we prepared for more people needing technology? And so I'll just take myself for example, right? I knew that this started in March and we were gonna possibly go through May. And so my kids used whatever we had and they made it work.
Yep.
Would that be, would the equipment they have be ideal for a longer period of time? No. And so are we prepared for other parents to come up and say, yeah, I made it work last spring, but I need equipment this.
We have
at the
resources
beginning of
on
the school
site
year?
to address additional need. I mean, the argument becomes if 2/3 of the district come to us and say we need something, yeah, we'll have a struggle there. But based on surveys and data that we have from like Bright Bite surveys we've done over the years showing, I mean, at one time, the most recent one, it was 95 or 97% of respondents, parents and students said they had access to sufficient technology at home. They had access to sufficient internet at home. Now, you know, across 10,000 people, you know, there's still quite a few that would have answered we don't have enough. But, you know, this spring we were definitely capable of meeting the needs. Some people who brought them back said, you know, honestly, we never ended up using it. The technology we had ended up being fine. We had some hotspot people kind of say the same thing. We had internet or we didn't have internet, and then, you know, other options like Mid-Continent and RVig and Charter, they all offered those very, you know, the low income packages that they were able to, that they typically offered for $15 a month. They just said, you know what, like Midco was fantastic. They said, you know what, we're just gonna give it to you for free, installed for free, no contract. You get it through the rest of this COVID schooling. And if you don't need it when you're done, we take it out, it doesn't cost you a penny. That was fantastic. And that saved a lot of families from needing a hotspot, which, I mean, would have been provided no cost to them as well. But, I mean, with what we have right now and the expectations that are set by the state and by ourselves as far as distance learning goes with COVID, we've been able to meet the needs, and I'm confident we'll be able to meet those needs in the fall, if we are distance learning again.
So to recap, you said if we were to accelerate it and try to make this happen for next year, the first of the year that's
Start of school year, no.
right. First of the year would be the first to do this. Now, if we follow the plan, and I'll say, Brad, your plan, when would you suspect that we would be ready to go 1-to-1?
The fall of 21 school year.
Okay, so again, all I would say is if we follow that, my fear is that if, you know, again, things are going to change and maybe get better with goods and those things, but I hope that we're making sure, because we're talking about a 6-month, try to start at the beginning of the year, start in January. So again, let's not, if we decide to follow that plan, all of a sudden be back here talking next summer about how we just couldn't quite get it to work. I just want to make sure that we are accelerating it to the point that there's no questions asked. We've got this system ready to go.
Well, and that's where Beth, Brad, and myself, we've had a 1-to-1 subcommittee meeting this year where we've talked a lot about this. This is where, you know, from the logistical and the budgeting standpoint, you know, me speaking with vendors, we have the money figured out, we have the logistics of equipment figured out, or if we know we have a 120-day lead time, we'll order it 120 days ahead of time. We can work those things out with the vendor to ensure that we're ready to go for fall of 2021. I mean, that we've got, you know, we don't need to speak to it too much, but, you know, we have some professional development services coming from Apple with the staff purchases this year that I think is going to be really helpful for them. You know, they're good staff now, but NPD is great. So, I mean, we've got a good plan in place, and we really want to execute it the way we have it laid out because we think it's going to be best for the
So
students.
what's wrong with accelerating it and trying to get the bugs worked out January 1st? Kind of protecting ourselves if things go even more sour with the whole COVID and maybe having a chance to be ready. But it really, again, you know, we're leaving the money out of it right now, so Beth, I'm sorry, but I'm just talking about logistics part and trying to get the work done so that we have a chance if we were to need to do that. Is that, again, I want you to tell us what you want.
I want us to be what's best for students in a fiscally responsible manner. So, the thing about the one-to-one is if we're on campus and students are carrying around devices that aren't connecting, that's gonna be an absolute failure.
We already said we're not gonna do
We're
that.
talking about
So
January.
now-
We're not, forget that, we're not gonna kick it out until it works. I just wanna know, so tell us what you want. How do you want us to do it?
Solutions,
Solutions.
focusing on solutions only.
I do not want the school district to go backwards financially.
So no solution.
The
So
solution,
we
no,
stay the
that's not
course?
it. That's not the solution. The solution was to continue down the road of the plan that is being presented. We did all the pre-work this year. We get staff to get their computers this upcoming year, and students come on in 21.
Well, but that was what we were gonna do.
What's that?
Wasn't that what we were going to do?
That's
So we just decided that there's no possible way.
No changes?
We're sticking with what we're gonna do, because, again, we wanted to hopefully have you say, okay, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, but we're just hearing that we're sticking with the plan.
I guess from my perspective is that, I know that kids are number one, but another part of the responsibility of the board is to be fiscally responsible. And personally, with the uncertainty, we don't even know, we're setting a budget of what our volume is going to be, or students' level is. We don't know if that level is going to be met with open enrollment yet. We're assuming that it is. We don't know that. So, the uncertainty of that number, and then the uncertainty of what's going to happen with the legislator of 0 and 0, and then on top of that, if we did pursue this, we're going to lose out on 50% of a payment from a federal. So, weighing, the students, which is number one, and the fiscal part of it, the fiscal piece of it, in my mind, personally, unless we could do something where it was like, as I proposed or talked about last time, like maybe just doing the high school, or maybe just doing a component of that, something that would sort of balance that a little bit more. But I just think there's too much risk fiscally for the district to put us into 4 years. And part of why we are here right now is because we have never gotten to that fund balance. And we've talked about getting to the fund balance for years and years. And the school is not about the fund balance, it's about the kids. But this is an opportunity that if we would have, or previous boards, and that can be me, part of that, if we would have worked to have that fund balance, this could have been a much easier discussion, and we wouldn't
No,
have
it's bigger than that, Jason. First of all, we're putting a price on kids and their education. So this is not my checkbook, it's not our checkbook. Secondly, we are in a district that has lots of issues. We have 5, 6 buildings. It is going to be almost impossible for us to get to the fund balance if we're not taking it out of kids' pockets. And we can't do that because we have busing, transportation, we have so many things that are going to hinder us to ever get there.
So
And we have to give every kid today the best education they can get.
And why would the state say that you want to have a fund balance of the X amount? And
Because I would like to have $20,000 in my checkbook at all times too.
And because we're having an incident where we might need fund balance, because we might, who knows what our.
I'm just disagreeing with you. And I want people to know that it is okay for us to do what's best for kids.
I agree with
And
you 100%.
I don't think for 30 years that the school board didn't want to get to the fund balances. There are challenges, and Lynn can tell us all those challenges of why we can't get there in this district. And that fund balance amount that the state sets is probably not fair for every district based on the challenges we have. Because it'd really be nice to only have to take care of one building, so we're putting $1 million into a building that if we had everything in one building, we wouldn't have to do that. So again, there are bigger issues out there when it comes to the fund balance. And I am not going to let anybody think that I am going to take it away from our kids because we're going to try to save $300 or $300,000 or $400,000 when the kids over the next 2 years are the ones that are going to suffer.
There's one thing, and we're going negative. That's not saving anything. That's going backwards. How is doing this saving anything? It's not.
It's giving our kids what we need now with the
And I
crisis.
agree with you 110% that our kids are number one.
And it's okay. Again,
I'm just saying that we need to find a balance. We have to find a balance as a board of how we are fiscally responsible, and yet we can meet the needs of our kids, which is the number one reason why we're all here.
And
I don't,
again,
what's the earliest that we could get the E-rate funding?
So when we, so, okay. So the E-rate for the coming fiscal year for the Wi-Fi project, as I'm assuming what we're referring to here, that E-rate bidding window opens in, I can't remember if it's December.
It's January.
Yeah, you're right, January. And it's typically open till end of March, early April, and that's just the bidding time. That's when you file your Form 470s, and then once the bid goes out, you get all your requests, your proposals back. You look at them, pick the one that meets your needs and is most fiscally responsible, and then you file a Form 471, which is used to actually apply to the program to say, based on my Form 470, here's what I did, here's what I want to purchase with it, here's all my population numbers, my student counts, my school's lunch program numbers, and you plug that all in, somebody on that end reviews it, and then they send you a message back saying, great, you have qualified. Typically that process
I guess I'm just looking for
just
what's the
the start to finish process, typically you get something in May, June, that you're getting the money, but the money doesn't fiscally become available to you until the upcoming fiscal year. So as an example, what I filed this past winter for the Cold Spring Elementary wired infrastructure is actually money I can't receive until after July 1st, when we get into fiscal 21? 21. So that's technically fiscal 21 money that I'm going to get rebated. So for the wireless infrastructure, when I apply for that this coming winter, January, February-ish, and I go through that process again, that money is not going to become available to me or get reimbursed until July
have you looked
fiscal
in to
22.
see if they're doing any sort of waivers and timelines due to COVID? Because pretty much everybody's doing all kinds of things.
For this year, the only one they did is they extended the Form 471 filing window. They pushed that one out to like mid-May maybe, I think it was. They pushed that Form 471 filing window out farther so you could get your application into the schools and libraries program for that reimbursement, because they knew everything was in limbo and working with, excuse me, with vendors and such would be challenging. But I mean, as far as getting that money faster, I'll be honest, I'll go back and look to see if there is something else. I mean, it's worth looking at. But just based on things I've looked at on their website the last time I was there, which actually was a couple weeks ago for a different E-rate thing, I mean, it is what it is. It's standard business as usual. I mean, we won't be able to get that money early. So, but I will go back and
It
look.
might be worth a conversation versus just checking out a website. Just
Yeah,
to see.
they've got a support. They've got like a support number you can call to ask questions about programs and stuff like that. I can certainly reach out to them. That's not a big deal. It's easy to get a hold of somebody, so I can certainly do that.
And that'd be great. And again, Brad, I think what we talked about 2 weeks ago was that, I guess I was expecting some creative out of the box
Yeah, me too.
thinking.
I was expecting a solution.
Again, I mean, like Lynn brought up, I mean, it's a big budget, and there's things that can be shifted around.
Or some sort of hybrid option where we deploy some to some schools if one of the buildings doesn't need as much Wi-Fi as other buildings,
And
to
here are
sort
the
of like
ramifications.
reduce some of the costs there. I don't know,
A little bit more
anything
understanding
creative
about
would have been great to hear today.
So I think that was part of our frustration here, is because we knew that it wasn't great financially, and we knew that it would be, we were told it was very difficult to institute it next year. We knew those things. We wanted to know how could we maybe move some things around to paint a better picture. So like Jason said, we don't want to go negative. Now, however, we're borrowing against ourselves, and yes, we are going negative, and yes, the sky could fall and the fund balance, and again, I'm going to go back to, we have to worry about the kids that right now we're educating. And we have to try to find a way to solve that. And I think that's what was disappointing for me, and what made this frustrating is that we knew that. You told us that last week. And basically we were just saying, we got nothing.
I'll disagree a little bit that we're not able to educate our kids if we need to go distance learning. I think
No. You're missing, Brian, stop. I said, we have to do what's best for our kids right now. I'm not saying that we're not trying to do what's best for them. I said, we want to try to give them all the best opportunities we can on a yearly basis. That's
Well,
And
and
we
we talked a
believe
lot
that
at our
the-
last meeting about equitable education and equitable to all students. So if everybody's using different devices, the way that education looks is different. The way it looks and feels to the students with the different devices is different. And so that was a lot of our discussion at the last meeting too, is by accelerating, we can make it an equitable experience for all students. Because it's not right now.
Yep. That's a difficult argument to have, but we're doing the best with what we have, and we have already accelerated the plan farther ahead by deploying everything the fall of '21. That's not an unaggressive timeline.
But that was the plan before COVID hit, so we really haven't
Correct.
done anything different from before COVID to after COVID.
Right,
It's
'cause
literally,
we were
it's
already-
really literally stay the course and stay comfortable. That's where we're
Well,
at.
I'll be honest, I'm not 100% comfortable with the plan we have now. It's going to be very challenging to ensure we have a smooth deployment, K-12, of all those devices. I mean, we're going to be rolling out about 850 iPads, enrollment pending, and about 1,500 laptops to kids. That's going to be really hard to see that done successfully. So, to counter that argument, I think we've been aggressive from the get-go, and we've already trimmed a lot of that fat off versus trying to do it in a phased-in approach year over year. And it just happens when we come to this particular head and we ask, can we trim any more? We don't feel that's prudent. We feel fiscally and logistically, what's best for students, what's best for the fiscal responsibility of this district is to do what we have in place now, and that's the plan we're proposing.
Okay, so I want to hear that from you, please.
Okay.
No, I mean,
I guess I would still like this to go
Yeah.
back to the next meeting.
I want this on every meeting
Different
until we come
out of
up with something
thoughts.
better.
Have we turned every stone and looked at every, because
And
I don't know that I feel like we have,
Yeah.
or at least there hasn't been enough that says that I can feel like we have.
yeah, and, or that information isn't clear or
Right,
easily
something.
understood by me. So I would like to see this be, like, I feel like what I'm hearing from the board and what I feel is that this is extraordinary circumstances, like I've never seen since my tenure on the board, and probably in my entire education personal experience. And I would like to see a huge united effort with excitement to try to figure out how we're gonna solve this together. And if it comes back to the board and these, you know, here's the parameters, here's the pitfalls, here's the positives, the negatives, then we can have a well-informed, robust conversation. But until we have that, for me, I feel like it's just not sufficient.
Okay, so here's what I suggest then. If you need more clarification, please make an appointment with me. I will absolutely give you as much time as you need for me to help you feel clear about where we're going. At the last meeting, you asked me to come back with something. I trust both my technology director and my finance director when they tell me that this is not what's best for our students. And so, Shannon, you're asking a question, you want to hear it from me. I want to put a device in every single kid's hand starting next school year. Brian will be the first one to tell you that I came to him and said, I need to do that. Beth will be the first one to say, but I have to listen to my directors. My directors are saying, and I agree with them, that it's not best for kids to do it this year, financially and logistically.
Okay.
Okay. Now, that being said, as I just heard Kara say, we will bring it back on the table. I will go back to the drawing board. Maybe it's time for Brad to reach out to Cold Spring Grad, and maybe they can partner with us. Or maybe we have other businesses that we can partner with.
Just remember, you heard a couple times someone say hybrid, you know, how do we
It
ensure?
doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Right, I
It
mean,
could be,
you know,
it could be a combo of them, 10
It
different
helps,
things.
it helps for us from an IT standpoint and maybe a budget standpoint, if even possible, to phase it in even over this year. But how, you know, why not try to, you know, have maybe that senior class pilots this thing and we see how it goes and how, you know, we get some things handed out and it makes sense to give it out to the seniors and now you've got one class done. I mean, there's just so many things that you could come back with that would make us feel, and I agree with Kara, excited about saying, you know, we're going to try to just work a little bit better, even faster than what we thought we could do it. And we're going to pull a little bit of dollars from here, and we're going to pull a little bit of dollars from here, and we're going to rah-rah with everybody. We've got a group of teachers that's willing to help do it, and we've got people that are going to come in and we're going to help, community members going to come and help do whatever it is to check things out. I mean, there's just, you know, again, I'm okay with us saying it's not good enough. It's not good enough for our kids, and we want a potential solution. And I think if the end of the day it's only gonna happen in 2021, we've exhausted every possible thing. The bus service, heck, we've done a heck of a job of helping them get through this. Guess what? Maybe they'll help us get through next year. I didn't have time to sit and brainstorm on it, but I think if you sat and brainstormed on it, there's some things you could do.
Okay. Can we move on to item B? You ready?
Sure. Is everybody ready? Okay. Item B.
So graduation update, we are still planning for a July 11th graduation ceremony. Mr. Jensen is meeting with his stakeholders on Wednesday, this week Wednesday, to finalize those plans. As you know, the guidelines came out that would allow up to 250 people in an outdoor venue. And so that at least gives us the opportunity to put the kids in a venue and have a ceremony. So those details will be worked out on the 24th. That's this week. MDE guidelines. Last week, the Minnesota Department of Education and Minnesota Department of Health came out with their guidelines for what school could look like in the fall. And those are the in-person, the hybrid, and the distance learning models. We are meeting tomorrow administratively. We have about a 45-minute agenda to go through, start looking through the planning on how each one of those will work. Even on the in-person, for example, they're still asking us to try to do lunches a little bit differently, so we'll have lots of planning to do around that. If we are in a hybrid, we have lots of planning to do around how do you put 50% capacity for students. If you have a classroom of 24 students, that's 12 one day, 12 the next, and how do you reach those students in a hybrid model that are at home? We have lots of discussions and planning to do around that, as well as then from the distance learning from what we did last year and improving upon it should we have to be in a distance learning. And then, of course, to top it all off, how to go between all three, how to be nimble between all three. Next on our discussion is
Well, one second,
I'm sorry.
Minnesota State High School League is not, are they just following him? Because I hear some coaches saying, oh yeah, we're playing next year, we're gonna be, our activities are up and going, partly because they allowed them to start doing some practicing, but from what I know from you, that's not necessarily the case.
High school came out on, high school activities, High School League came out on Friday with their guidelines. As of right now, they're following the Department of Health, which is allowing them to open up for like inter-squad stuff starting, and so they have not said that we'll have volleyball or football for next year yet. That has not come out.
Is there any idea of when they'll make that decision?
I am assuming that they will make that decision when the Department of Education makes their model decision, whether they're going to be in-person, hybrid, or distance learning. And that's the week of July 27th. Knowing that fall camps for our activities typically will start on that August 10th date.
And I think they backed up that dead period a week,
They did.
so they can go one more week in August versus having the first 2 weeks.
Correct. Yeah. So that's what I know about the activities piece.
Any other questions? Item E, high school parking lot.
No, I'm sorry. Or
It's
D? Plat.
D.
Plat?
Plat.
Plat? Oh, we're on plat, sorry.
Tonight we have Kara Linz and Josh Osted here to present on the annual report on our QCOP.
Hello to all. My name is Josh, and this is Tara. Go ahead, Tara, you're the chairperson. All
too close together. So we sent a PowerPoint to Brad today, and he shared that with all of you. So it looked probably similar to what you've seen in the past a little bit, because like on slide 2, what is QComp? None of those things have really changed. Do you guys have any? The one thing that we just talked about is that we said that the district received $557,441. We took that from Beth's report, and that's probably not necessarily what the district received, but
That's the budget.
that's what our budget was this year. So we wanted to just clarify that we probably put that on not quite correct. Then on slide 3, the goal of QComp, is a collection of professionals working on a common purpose. And our goal is to promote student learning and growth. And then the next slide, components of QComp are our SLGs, our student learning goals, our PGPs, our professional growth plans, teacher evaluation, and then our PLCs, which has also stayed the same. And PLCs meet 1 hour per week, and usually it's through April. This year, obviously, that plan was changed a little bit also with COVID. Not saying that people still did not work on their PLCs and goals through distance learning. And this year we actually had 28 leaders, which is up a little bit from last year, which is great because our goal is to try to spread out that leadership amongst our teachers in the district. Is it still me? No, it's
Well, I think you can tell that Kara teaches kindergarten, doesn't want to give any downtime because then they might be misbehaving.
Right.
But yeah, you just jumped ahead. We're about halfway done. I guess I'll talk about the results then. We're looking at slide 6. If you're kind of following along, 100% of our teaching staff attempted to complete their teacher evaluation, but because of the coronavirus, because of COVID-19, that did cause some disruptions. But all of our staff were prepared for those evaluations, whether it was the induction folks that had their portfolios ready, but just didn't have opportunities to share them. 100% of our licensed staff participated in the professional learning communities on Thursday mornings or the action research throughout the year. All of those people that are in our first 3 years of induction, they are part of a PLC on Thursday morning, so they're included in that group. And there were 99 leadership positions that were compensated in some, financially by QComp this year. Slide 7. There was only one action research group this year. It consisted of 7 different people. The difference between an action research PLC and the standard PLCs is that each of those participants that were in an action research group, they chose one topic that they wanted to research and explore throughout the year, and then they met on those Thursdays to share what their planning was, what their outcome, what their finding, what their data was, etc. Where those that were in a PLC had one common topic. So maybe there was 3 people that were looking into how they were going to create a differentiated classroom, or maybe they were going to look at how they were going to improve their team building within their classroom, or maybe they were going to explore their curriculum just a little bit deeper. So one action research group, and then there's 28 PLCs, and that number's up 9 from last year. And there were 30 people this year that were part of induction, which is those teachers that have been in our district for year 1, year 2, or year 3. Moving on to some implications. If you would like to talk about some of those implications, Kara?
Yeah, and most of these have stayed consistent throughout the time of having QComp also. So it does save the district some money in the induction program because the compensation for our teachers in induction is paid through QComp, as well as the mentors for those teachers. So there are proximity mentors and instructional coach mentors, and those stipends are also paid through QComp. The district instructional coach position, so Josh's position, Mary Swanson's position, are also paid through the QComp dollars. It helps provide professional staff development, and then also we compensate district committees through the QComp. Some other implications, it gives our teachers personalized learning opportunities, and our students benefit from our teachers having more instructional practices or interventions. And it builds relationships between staff because a lot of times PLCs go cross grade level, cross building, cross subject in the high school. So it helps get people out, meeting new people, and building those relationships throughout the district. And then it also is developing leadership amongst our staff.
As an instructional coach, I'll just address some of the things that Mary Swanson and I did this year. I'm on slide 10 if you want to look at some of the data that we put together. This year from September to March, we had 208, support calls, requests. So if staff wanted us to come into their room to help them with an assessment, to help them build a lesson, to partner with them in an observation, they would send something through us through Teams, and then we'd respond to that. 208 is the exact number we had last year, but this year we stopped counting in March because some of the data that we would share would have just thrown things off. Mary and I might spend 5 hours with one staff member during distance learning just because of the curve that we need to, no pun intended, but the curve that we needed to overcome at that time. So 208 requests throughout the district this year from September to March. We had 8 Fear Factor sessions that were focused on technology. A Fear Factor session is nothing more than a creative name for a staff development opportunity for our staff, pre-K through 12. So if a teacher came to us and they said, Josh, Mary, we have some interest in learning more about Skyward. Well, on the calendar, maybe there wasn't that wasn't planned, but then we could schedule a morning before school or an afternoon after school to meet those teachers' needs. A lot of them, as you can see this year, the majority of it had to do with technology. So whether it was dealing with flexible learning, working with teams, whether it was working with Skyward, etc. And then it says, but there was 9 total from September to March. The one that didn't have to do with technology was a team building activity that we did with the staff. Again, these were all optional for teachers to attend, and they did get credits for attending. This year, the big focus was supporting our reading intervention in our kindergarten through 5th grade classrooms, and we used PRESS, which is a literacy intervention. And then also quite a bit of support with flexible learning and also with Teams technology. The very next page is a breakdown of the different support requests that Mary and I had. The top 3 have to do with observation in the classroom, assessments, and then also technology application. And most of those things focused on Teams and focused on the Microsoft suite of technology that we have within the district. But there are plenty of other things too with Zoom and Flipgrid and Nearpod and stuff like that we assisted with as well. Our goal, is as we wrap up, there's just 2 slides left, I'm on page 12, is during that time when we were away from the building, every day was quite different as an instructional coach. There was less focus on assessments and a lot more focus on how are we going to get this to the kids, how are we going to use this technology, because I don't know how to use the technology yet, how am I going to help my kids learn that technology. And then for next year, as I've accepted a different role in the district, I will be leaving Platt. The final slide shows the 7 staff members that will be part of Platt for 2020-2021. Carolyn's Anita Hendricks. Carolyn's is an elementary teacher, 1st grade teacher. Anita Hendricks is a high school and middle school art teacher. Anita Hendricks is in the elementary school as a special ed teacher. Erkins, what did I say?
You said Hendricks, choice.
There's 2, that's all right.
Yep, that's okay.
Mary Swanson is an instructional coach, pre-K-12. Joyce Bauman is an elementary teacher. Darcy Erie is a middle school social studies teacher. And Lisa Lovewood is what is her official title?
She is a special ed teacher at John Clark.
So, thank you very much. Any questions?
Jake Nelson sits on the committee.
Oh, and there's 2 administrators,
And
Jake
Sam
Nelson
Porter.
and Sam Port, sorry.
Yep. If you have any questions, I know that was a lot of information in a little short period of time.
Now, when they do the PLCs or the action research, do we tie those into like specific goals or themes every year?
Yes,
And
so,
if so, what were they this year?
well, I guess I couldn't say specific, but you're supposed to try to have your PLC go along with your building goal, which goes along with the district goal. It's supposed to be a big triangle, so your PLC and your SLG, everything should go together so that you're working on one common thing. Are there a lot of different ways to go that route? Yes. So,
Do you know some of the different topics that people worked on or like the action research? How did that?
Sure. So folks get to choose what PLC or what action research that they want to attend, unless they're in their first 3 years at Rocori, then they're part of an induction group. But there was a group of coaches this year that met just to talk about building relationships in and outside of the classroom. So they had, many of those folks had that as part of their PGP, okay, their personal growth, their goal throughout the year. Others were looking at, the science curriculum, wanted to, take what they had and update it. And some of the I guess accountability along the way is that each of our teachers had reflections that they had to also, answer and write to show their progress throughout the course of the year.
does that answer your question, Kevin?
Yeah, I guess knowing that this next year we're going to be moving towards the technology one-to-one, is there any way to get more people to focus their PLCs and their action research this coming year on putting that into place? Because that would also help us get there faster and in a better position to be ready.
So the one thing that Rocori prides itself on with our QComp dollars is that we give our teachers choice, where a lot of other districts don't have that option. They are pigeonholed into one topic. But that being said, I do believe that when new things come up, a lot of times that's what teachers choose, because they know that it will benefit them and give them extra time to do it.
And that should certainly be encouraged, of those that are going to be leaders of PLCs to, pick something that matches our needs. There were some staff that were part of technology PLCs. One to mention is we got a plasma cutter in the iTech area this last year, and some of the iTech staff, that was their PLC each Thursday, working on the plasma cutter and just improving their knowledge and use of that.
What happened in the last couple months of school with distance learning was like a big experiment of going one-to-one. Despite the previous conversation, we're going one-to-one either way, whether it's this year or the following year. But do you have anything that you feel like the board should know about your experience with as an instructional coach, or Kara with being?
Sure. Do you have anything you want to?
The only thing that I can say that we heard loud and clear from parents, especially parents who have more than one child in the district, is that they know we all did the best that we could, and everyone did what they could in this time frame, and we tried to do it fast so that we were ready. But the one thing that we've heard loud and clear, and I think we've already addressed this as a district, is that if we could all be on the same platform instead of all over the place, it would be really helpful to parents. And I know that now we're looking at Schoology, so that helps. That's the one thing that we heard loud and clear.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, from working with staff and also students in this last, 3 months or so, people have really stepped outside of their comfort zone. I think Mr. Kelvington mentioned at one of the last board meetings, a staff member that had made 90 YouTube videos. Well, that person that had made 90 YouTube videos, in their last 20-some years of teaching, improvement in technology for them is like going from chalk on a chalkboard to now using a whiteboard. And I'm being sarcastic, but that was a huge leap for this person to make those videos. So I think people stepping outside their comfort zones was big. I do think that something that should certainly be encouraged going forward is the face-to-face from staff members to and with their kids. Some had great opportunities where they could spend, a special ed teacher was able to spend 45 minutes, with one student one-to-one. You don't see that in a regular day all the time. That's a great positive, and that certainly should be encouraged going forward. Different platform does cause an issue, but I think we can overcome it. I think we're in a better place now than we were 90 days ago.
So Carrie, if we came to you and you just heard us talk about trying to get there, and asked, could we institute a plan to use the QCOM dollars to have our teachers train each other and train the rest of the staff, and this one-year focus, we really need our focus to be there. And it may take away some of that choice, but I'm guessing we could find some choice within this. If that was an ask, is that, can that group be part of the solution of getting us there faster?
I definitely think it's something that we could talk through. I don't think it's something I'd throw away, say no to. I want to be careful with taking that away from teachers and that choice, because when you make it something that's mandated or something that is a must-do, then the attitude changes.
They make their kids do homework.
Well, I think the selling point is a little bit different. We're in a crisis.
Yeah,
we're trying to implement something fast. We just got done hearing that we don't have the man hours, we don't have the ability to make it happen. Separate that from the fiscal, separate that from the infrastructure, but the other piece is, how do we actually get it out there? Well, this might be a workforce that puts in extra time, right? So everybody understands, and maybe this is extra time that teachers put in to help themselves get better.
Correct.
This might be that 1 year where we ask them, someone's gonna help check them out, someone's gonna help make sure they're right, so there's different jobs.
Right.
But I think that would be a,
Limited choice.
yeah, there's,
So what you're saying
But I don't know if it's completely limited though. I mean, we had 28 different types of PLCs this year. You know, everything from reading a book and having a book study to, you know, learning how to use this piece of technology that much better. So I applaud that. I think that's a great thing to be encouraged, is that, you know, we are in desperate times, and hey, you don't have to create a PLC that is focused on flexible learning, distance learning, but we sure would encourage you to.
To be honest, a lot of times that's what PLCs are surrounded by, is something that comes up that you want to be better at, you want to get better at. So obviously in this situation, that what we want to get better at
so
is
there's probably a
change.
creative way to give choices,
Right.
but actually keep everybody in the
Right,
box, and
right.
so,
And the teachers will have their new one-to-one device, so.
right.
Right, and that's going to be a learning curve for a lot of people
Right.
also.
But I'm saying if it's a learning curve and you can use your PLC time to learn on it,
Correct.
it might.
As long as you have someone to teach you.
Hmm?
As long as you have someone to teach you, right?
Well, you all work together.
Right.
I'm sure there's somebody that knows that you pull into your PLC, right?
Right.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Thanks,
All
Karen.
right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right. Okay, so now item B, sorry about that, high school parking lot.
Tonight, I invited Brent and Design Tree representative Jeremy.
There you go.
Jeremy to be here tonight to speak to us about the parking lot. And maybe, Jeremy, if you could give us just a little bit of information on where we've been and where we are to this point, that'd be helpful too.
As far as how the construction's
how's it going?
progressing, and,
Yeah, how's it
yeah,
going?
so before the meeting, I stopped out and I talked with Ken Gherkin. They're anticipating that by Wednesday, at the end of the day on Wednesday, they'll have the parking lot to grade, subgrade, which means that then they'll be ready to put the gravel on and start putting in the light poles and things like that. So the next step, which is largely dependent on when the concrete subcontractor will come in to start pouring curbs and stuff like that. So there's been quite a bit of activity over there since they started working. You'll probably see that decrease a little bit until the concrete subs. It's just a scheduling thing. But as far as the construction, how it's going so far, it's going, I mean, we didn't find any problems out in the parking lot, no buried pipes, conduits, irrigation lines, anything like that we didn't know about. So we don't foresee any unforeseen conditions or anything like that that could inhibit the construction anymore in the coming up. So it's really just about them continuing down the path and sequencing the construction and getting it done for middle of August, where hopefully kids can use it again. And I did send over to Brent a couple weeks ago, PR number 1.
Correct.
So I'll explain that proposal request and the reason behind it a little bit. So when we bid out the project, at the same time that we sent the project out for bid, we also sent it to the city for comments, review of their planning and zoning and their city engineer. We did not get the comments back from the city until after we had already opened bids. And one of those comments accounts for all of that PR number 1 cost except for about $800. And that would be on the original design in the the western part of the parking lot, we just had striped islands. We were just going to paint them. The city, one of their comments was they required us to put in concrete curb around all those islands. And when we put concrete curb around those islands, then their ordinance requires a tree to be put in the island. So that added 12 islands to that parking lot and 12 trees. And the topsoil that is associated with it.
So them not commenting, I mean, obviously, I'm guessing they got the information and they just neglected.
I delivered hard copies to the city and digital copies to the city as well.
What was the date sequence there? I was listening. When did you submit it, and when was it?
We submitted it at the same time we advertised it for bid. I can't remember the exact date we advertised.
Was there a deadline for response to what went to the
No.
city for comments?
No, they don't have, they don't have a deadline like, they have to provide comments within 2 weeks or anything like that.
Did you ask for deadline?
I actually sent reminders to them going, have you had a chance to review this?
So you sent
I send
to the city?
reminders to
Okay.
the city office to go, do you have any comments? We haven't heard anything. And then it was after the bids where we actually did get the comments.
I'm imagining you do projects like this with other cities.
I do.
Typically, what's the turnaround time that you run into with other cities?
It depends. Sometimes we had one in Alexandria that we waited 3 months.
Of a project this size and scale?
Not of this, it was actually small.
Well, you already started the project going and you had to,
No,
something like this
we
where-
had to bug the city for 3 months. to
right,
get
but
the
we
comments.
we actually went out to bid without getting the comments. I guess
Right.
my question is, the city's not playing very nice. I mean, that's not nice.
Well, and the city does have landscaping requirements for the amount of landscaping you have to have within the parking lots, the number of the square footage of landscaping that we had to have interior to the parking lot. We met all those requirements on the east side, where some of those concrete islands are.
Right, so I think what Jen's maybe asking, I'm asking, experience with other jobs. You know, the city could have played nice and said, oh.
They could have gotten their comments to us
Right.
sooner, or at least because before we submitted the plans for comments, we did send plans to them too, to get their initial thoughts on what do we need to do, because they wanted landscape screening to the south of the parking lot where there's the gap in the trees. So we added that, that's included in the bid. There are some other items that are included.
So you got that feedback?
So we got that feedback from them, but they didn't give us this feedback about adding those additional islands until we submitted the final plans to them for the actual permit.
And
So-
was that part different on the draft plans to the
No,
final plan?
no, they were always the striped islands.
So is that typical to get like, wouldn't you get like, this is the feedback, end of story, or do they get?
Well,
feedback
we did it just to,
Because
we typically like to do it on projects like this, just so that when we submit the plans, that we don't get a lot of, this is what we want, and you need to change this. Because then we like to do it because then when we get the comments back, we know that the stuff that's coming back is maybe pretty minor. They had 3 pages of comments. Most of them were like, okay, show this existing water line, which was outside of our construction limits. Or add this note to this plan, which were no cost type of things. They were just little details. But those comments were included in this PR as well. But the 98% of the cost of PR boiled down to one comment.
Right, the thing at the end here, right?
Yeah, it boiled down to one comment, which was all those striped islands need to be
So, did we have a
concrete.
conversation, Brad, with them about, hey, geez, can we talk about how to maybe work through this versus just, having to.
I did. I do not recall the exact conversation I had with Bridget, but it was pretty cut and dry that these are the requirements of the city for the curbs, for the beautification, for the trees, for the screening, and
Did you make it clear that,
yep.
What if we don't do it?
Yeah, we don't have any money.
I guess I didn't necessarily ask what if we don't do it, because my assumption would be we don't get a permit to build that. Or we don't get occupancy at the end.
I guess you didn't reach out at all and just say, hey, can we, what was the dollar
This
amount?
seems ridiculous.
$30,000.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I guess I would, there's no possible way I would take that cut and dry. I would say, come on. You guys missed all this, you wrote all this 3 pages worth of stuff into one thing that's gonna cost us money, and I can't imagine that they wanna sat down and say, all right, what safety issue, what is this, can we, maybe they really wanted it, so they kick in some money to help cover it. We're in a crisis with money right now. And I understand this.
And the bad part about it is I've seen trees planted in parking lots like this before, and the trees will more than likely die.
It's just, to me, it seems absolute craziness that
This is crazy.
I just,
I think you could say go to Teal's, they had to cut down a tree. I think.
Well, and we talked about too, even the boulevard trees and things like that the city plants is usually half of them die at least because of the amount of salt and just what they're exposed to.
Is there an additional cost impact to this revision because it was not part of the original plan?
That's why it's a PR, it's a proposal request.
No, I know that it's $30,000, but the work was already started by the time you got, or at least it was ready to begin. Is there?
She says there a premium on, is there a premium
If
on
they
that?
would have notified us when they notified us of the other.
So I looked at the
revisions, would it have
pricing.
cost less?
I mean, the price that the concrete guys submitted for the curbing is in line with industry standards, and it says right on their quote that this is the same price we used for the rest of the curb on the job. So they didn't go, okay, we charge $15 for this curb, now we're gonna charge $19.
Okay, so we're not getting.
Yeah,
bad
and they're
deal.
crediting back the asphalt that would have been in those islands,
Okay.
which was one thing that I was looking for to make sure that they did, because, you know, they had said, well, that's gonna make paving more difficult.
Okay.
Well, they still gave us the credit even though they said that initially.
So then so it's like a net $22,000 difference then?
No, the credit's built
Oh,
into
the
it.
credit's built into the
That
price.
minus 7,900 is
Okay.
in there.
Okay, so, okay.
I mean, because essentially we're adding 1,200, with those islands, it's about 1,200 feet of curb
Right,
that's
so
being added.
from an expert standpoint, I mean, every city has different ordinances. I mean, I guess, is it something that maybe Brent or you, Jeremy, would think is important to have these around there, or is this aesthetics, is this, you know, somebody wants it?
They're not necessary.
Okay, that's what I want.
It's not
And
functionally
gonna make it
necessary.
very-
It's not functionally necessary.
I mean, we're just not in a position to
Yeah.
spend
I mean,
money like that. The
because-
city's gotta work with us.
Even going further back than this, Brent and I had a conversation about should those be islands or not. And, you know, and it was decided ultimately that no, because it makes it more difficult for snow removal.
Right.
And I mean, in the winter, if you don't clear the snow, then I mean, it gives you some extra turning around the corners without
It gives-
having
yeah,
to
it gives you
curve
some
there.
wiggle
If
room.
somebody comes in there with a vehicle that, you know, pick up pulling a trailer or something
Right.
that's a little longer.
And we talked
We
about
care
that.
that it looks good.
Right.
We want our schools to look good, but if you're saying that the trees have a low survival rate, which is why you don't see
Yeah.
them very often, the curbing is gonna get dinged with
Snowplow.
snowplows, it's gonna look like crap.
I mean, I can predict the answer that you're gonna get from the city. We don't wanna set a precedent with this project for future projects by other people.
We're $20 million.
That, I mean, I do city engineering for some cities, and that's what if I was the city engineer, that's what I would tell my clerk. But
They didn't tell us.
I mean, we met all their landscaping requirements with the original plan.
But it wasn't such a big deal, and even with your experience, that you didn't say, hey, do you guys, you know, like, they might have missed it? I mean, you know what I'm saying? If you'd have thought it was super important, you would have said to them, hey, I mean.
Well, and if we hadn't shown them the plan ahead of time to get comments before we actually submitted for the permits, that would be a different story. But I mean, we submitted a plan to them early on to go, hey, this is what we're looking at doing.
And they commented on
And they gave us comments. That's where we got the land, that this is the landscaping we needed to provide. This
And
was
those comments you got
before we put it out to bid. Those comments that we got it are incorporated in. I mean, and if we had these comments before the bids were issued, I don't think the price would have been a whole lot different. The bids just would have been a little bit higher by a
Right,
comparable.
but we
Yeah.
would have done something
I think there's two
different.
things, so like, I think there's lots of reservation,
Right.
hesitation from the board to approve anything like this
Yeah.
that could have been mitigated ahead of time.
Yep.
And is in the middle of a project and when we have finances like this. And number two is like, what are the timetables that this has to happen? Like, absolutely, like, can we go to the city and appeal it?
Before
at
the
that
curb
time?
guy comes?
Yes.
I mean, for what I talked about, for them doing grading grade, this does not affect it. So basically, we didn't change the grade of the parking lot when we put in the islands. I mean, the water just flows around the island. So really, the grading grade, the gravel, it's gonna be the same whether these concrete islands are there or not. So when the concrete guy shows up on site, that's when we need to know, are we gonna?
So it sounds
So
like
what's
you
the-
need, that's like you said Wednesday?
No, Wednesday they're gonna finish the grading grade. It'll probably be a couple weeks
Okay.
before the concrete guys and I can contact Knife River and find out if they have them scheduled.
When's our
and when
next
they
board meeting?
have them scheduled for.
13th.
Yeah, so it doesn't even meet our two policies. I mean, it's a bummer, but it's just,
And I just want to say, I can't speak to the timing. I know for a fact the city will say that we could have turned stuff in sooner or earlier or give them kind of an idea of what we're looking at. I know for a fact that discussion will happen. And I also feel strongly that my discussion with the zoning administrator, that the city won't let this happen. But I'd love to.
But we don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know.
And
So I
what
think we
the
absolutely
city
have
has
to.
the
It's
planning
a time we
commission.
lean on that relationship a little bit, and we let them know that we're a big part of this town and this community. And they're, I mean, our community uses all of our fields, our community does so many things on our property because the community has nothing. So how about you look at helping us so that when you want it for the community fair and you want it for all these other things, and again, this is your discussion you can have, but again, that's none of your guys'
Yeah.
issue. That's us as a school board saying.
And as far as the timing of when the PR was sent out, so I know Brent and I talked about it after I got the comment letter, and I was like, do you want us to make these changes right away, or do you want to go and talk to the city? And I think that's when Brent went and had his conversation with the city, and that's where he said, implement the changes, get the city to approve the revised plan, which is what's shown in the PR, so that we could get the permit.
Oh,
Right.
so I just think we have to ask the questions and go through that process.
Yeah, this is.
Because it's
not-
just, it's
yeah.
a lot of money, and I think potentially even a lot more expense. You know, the curb gets damaged by a plow.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
amount of
long-term
time
maintenance
the
is-
amount of time that's gonna be into plowing every year. Now we're adding an extra 15 minutes of plowing time or whatever for the
And
rest of
mowing.
the
I
existence.
mean, logistically,
The
you did it
existence
that
of
way,
this. So
right?
there is
Right.
more than just this $30,000 one-time expense. It's gonna be an ongoing expense of repair and maintenance and all that stuff that goes on with it.
so
So
there's
it
a,
just,
there's a
lot
there's a
of,
board design, or there's a design conversation that we have to have that, and I understand that they have precedents and they have rules, but then there's also the fact that we're getting this so late, and it's
Right.
not fair to us as a board to be forced to spend $30,000, that's half a teacher, on curbing that is actually not,
And you said
it's not all
12
desirable.
12,
It's
right?
not-
12 islands is
Right,
what
so
we
it
ended up
means-
having to add.
Again, compared to all the other businesses that are out there that may be dealing with one or two and they want it to, you know, have a certain look in town, again, we are a different entity in a different spot with a different use.
Yeah,
And it's
so-
just, it's unacceptable that the city,
And I mean, if you look at the plan, at the number of trees that we're planting along the county roads and boulevards and on that south property line, I mean, there's quite a bit of landscaping that's going on
So it's a
outside
huge
of-
aesthetic improvement as is.
so do we need a motion or just consensus that we'd like Brad to meet with the city and
And you'll say, I'm sorry,
is that, do we
We
need a
don't
motion
have
or
any for this.
consensus?
we don't need a motion.
Consensus, I think, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, but
I mean,
do we, if we don't approve something tonight, are we gonna hold up the whole?
But it's not an,
no,
Or-
I mean, no.
It's the first
No.
reading, it's a
Yeah.
discussion,
it's a
and
discussion item, isn't it?
if they would have had it to us in a proper review period, we would have been able to have the discussion with.
They won't spend $1,000 to fix the tennis courts that, you know, have been sitting there desolate forever.
let's focus on.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, no
tonight.
problem
Thank you.
whatsoever.
And
You've been
thank
very
you.
patient.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I go to city council meetings all the time.
Oh,
So I'm-
so
They gotta do it. Yeah.
Have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, thank you.
you. Okay, on to action. Item A, resolution for establishing filing dates. So, I don't know, is the resolution, is that in
It's
the
in-
packet?
Yeah, it's okay.
It's just-
So this is just a standard operation that we do every
Every
time there's
election
elections.
term. So I move to adopt the resolution for establishing dates for filing affidavits of candidacy.
Second.
Motion by Kara, second by Sunny. Any further discussion? That'll be a roll call vote. Jennifer?
Aye.
Jan?
Aye.
Aye.
Lynn? Jason, aye.
Kara?
Sure.
Oh, aye, sorry.
Sunny?
Aye.
Resolution passes. Okay. Item B, district goals.
So at the table tonight, we have the final version bringing to you for the Rocori School District, Rocori's district goals.
Is the,
Yeah, it didn't upload properly.
It did?
no, this is what we're seeing, unfortunately.
Well, mine is
Oh.
fine.
Mine's fine.
Mine's not.
Oh, it's
Mine
probably,
is fine.
oh, that's
So we
weird.
got some that work
What are
and
you
some
on?
that.
Yeah, I'm on an Apple.
That's probably why.
Does anybody
I thought it
else-
was like some Chinese
Anybody else-
class.
Oh, no.
So it must be a board book.
Mine have
Or
error
something.
language that was.
I thought you expected us to learn a different language.
No.
The last
It's, it's tough enough to learn the language that you're going tonight. I'm not gonna make it any tougher for anybody else. So the first one is increasing student achievement by engaging students in a variety, in varied instructional environments, and that's definitely speaking to the fact that we do have to be nimble for the next year, where we could see again in-person, hybrid, or distance learning. So in all cases, we want to focus on increasing student achievement. The second goal is supporting student development through equitable resources and approaches. All information coming back is that there are some students that no matter what you do, you're still going to see them struggle, both socially and emotionally, and we need to make sure that we're paying attention and focusing on those students who need that extra support, both in equity and in their social and emotional growth. Number three, the goal is to again expand the use of relevant and engaging technology in a one-to-one environment, so continuing to focus and moving forward with that. And then lastly, completing and launching our strategic plan and long-range facility plan.
Can you,
Go
go ahead.
ahead.
Can you explain to me the process that, these look good, can you explain to me the process you used to get here?
To get here. So we did do, prior to COVID, we did hire Bruce Miles to start our work, and he did those surveys, and so that part of this comes from that. Part of it comes from the results we got back from the 600 and some parents in the distance learning, the 200 and some students and our staff. So part of that comes to that. We talked about it administratively, brought their ideas. I think we had started with like 8 or 9 different ideas. Was it, Beth? First, and then we kind of whittled that down. Oh, you were paying attention to those ideas. Yeah.
We're busy.
We whittled it down to, I think it was 5, and then we further brought that down to 4. I sent those 4 ideas to Mr. Scanson, who knows how to work his magic, and he took kind of last year's template and how that was together, and that's what you see tonight. So it started from input from our community and students and staff through administrative team to you as a board.
That's great.
And then underneath each of these, there's measurable goals for each building or each
Yeah.
area?
Well, so thanks for that question, Lynn. So the process really is, so if the board approves the wide goals, then the buildings funnel it down. So then there has to be focus. So we don't have the building or the SLG or PGP groups. You have to first start here.
Right.
But, yeah.
So will those building goals and the SS stuff, will they come to us to see what they've developed as their building goals to support these?
Yeah, so the building goals come to you through the teaching and learning.
Oh, yeah.
So and then that goes into our world's best workforce. You wouldn't see the individual SLG and PGP. Those are through the principal. So I'm sorry about the characters and language that, but these are the 4 goals that I would recommend that you as a board adopt, so we can focus our work starting July 1st.
So I move to adopt the district goals for the 2020-2021 school year as presented.
I'll second it.
Motion by Kara, second by Lynn. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the district goals are approved. Thank you. All right. Superintendent evaluation summary. So part of the board packet, you will see a summary of Mr. Kelvington's evaluation. So I just want to thank him for all of his work this past year, especially with the COVID circumstances, and appreciate rising to the occasion and meeting that challenge. So thank you for that extra work. Any questions or comments on that? Otherwise, a motion to approve the evaluation.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Sunny,
Second.
second by Kara. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Evaluation summary is approved. And fiscal 21 budget.
Yep, so again, last meeting, you saw the preliminary budget, and it's back on the agenda for tonight for review. Beth did a really good job last time with explaining all the different intricacies, but if you have any further questions, you certainly can ask now. Otherwise, I just would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
The budget.
I'm sorry, the budget, thank you.
Nobody has any questions? I'll make the motion.
Motion by Lynn to approve the budget for next fiscal year.
Second.
Second by Kara. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The budget for fiscal year 21 is approved. Substitute rates. Item E.
Yeah, so item E is our sub rates as presented. So we did a survey. Beth did a survey, and I also did some survey work on substitute rates and pay for the different areas, teachers and classifieds. And we're recommending $125 for substitute teacher, and then $1 an hour in the classified areas. And that's, if I remember right, Beth, that's part of the budget they just approved. We had those increases in there.
Yep, one of our assumptions was about $30,000 to increase sub pay, so we did a little bit less than that for a cushion.
So,
I recommend that we come in line with our region as far as their sub pay rates, and as well as our.
Yeah, we've heard that we're losing out on subs because they can go to one of the other districts and get more, so I think it's important that we're doing this.
In subpay, does that include like leaves of absence for whatever reason? So this 1,113 days?
Those are only the short-term subs, I would call it. This doesn't include any, anyone who'd be covering like maternity leaves, for example. Those are paid on a BA step 1 daily rate. So they're tied to our teacher contract.
Okay.
The one question I forgot to ask back up, sorry. Do we know how many open enrollment kids we were gonna see where we were at with that number?
There is a graph included under the superintendent report for enrollment that has all of that broken down.
Okay.
So I see it, I think it's really important that we're competitive. I just, with going up $10, that kind of puts us not at the middle, but kind of at the top of the curve.
So we're with Teachers on Call for the teacher substitutes and paras, and we compete pretty closely with Sartell and Sauk Rapids and St. Cloud for our subs, and so their rates are anywhere from 120 to 140.
So, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, but this next page shows
Yep.
Sartell 120, Sauk Rapids 125.
Yep,
St. Cloud 120.
yep.
So
No. Are any of them?
what's the 140?
140, so St. Cloud does a training every fall, so if their substitutes attend in-house training, they get 140. If they're a retiree, it's 150. Sauk Rapids is 135 for a retiree, so we're really trying to make sure we're competitive with those districts that are competing with teachers on call with us.
Any other questions? Otherwise, a motion to approve the sub and para substitute.
Make that motion.
Motion by Lynn,
Second.
second by Sunny. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the teacher para substitute pay increase is approved. Apple lease discussion. Item F.
As you see, the contract is proposed here for us to start the process of getting the staff machines here. And this is the lease around those staff machines.
So page 82 is the lease payment schedule. So we can, Apple has that state contract, so we're able to just finance directly with them versus having to like use Ellers, our financial advisor, and spend money and more time bidding out financing. So this is kind of a nice streamlined way to do it, and then we're not involving another third party.
I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing. I had intended to, but we just received it this afternoon. Can you tell me, like, what, at the end of the term, do they replace the devices? It has FMV, $1 out, how's it set up?
So this is, they're ours at the end of the term, and then this is where I was talking about earlier with our one-to-one discussion where residuals come in.
Okay.
Where there are other companies that will do buyouts of those machines.
Do you know what the percentage that they're bought out at?
That's a super good question. I don't know if it's, I don't want to say the wrong dollar amount. Brian and I have thrown around numbers so much. It's somewhere between $200 and $400 a machine that they buy back at. And then generally, I think we estimated it like 80% of our machines would be in really good condition at the end of 4 years and get that, which is kind of a low conservative estimate. Does 200 or 400 sound wrong, Jen, as I say that number?
Usually, well, it depends how old the device is. How many years is this? 4 years?
4 year. Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe it'd be 20% of their value.
And they're like 900, I believe, to start out.
Okay.
250 is.
250. Brian would be able to throw that at you.
So somebody could buy it out, pay us the dollars back, and then we reinvest that into like cycling new devices?
Yep.
Are these also, is this lease like a TMV lease where it like covers all, like if you were to drop the machine, they replace it for you? Does it include any and all warranty repairs beyond the term of the warranty?
This is a good Brian question again. The first year on these staff machines, we weren't doing the extra warranty. And then after when we did, I'm trying to think about this.
So page 83 says includes all attachments, proceeds, replacements, substitutions, repairs, restorations, modifications, and improvements thereof or thereto. Do you think that means what Jen's asking?
There's certain things that are covered under it and certain things that are not. Because I know as we were talking about it that we were going to not buy an extra warranty for this first cycle, that we were going to, based on what other districts have seen, that we were just going to take the cost of having some repairs where we just send it out and then we pay for it as they happen.
We talked about that.
That was with the student devices we've discussed, but I just, with the teacher devices, I don't know that, or I wasn't listening. I don't know that we ever discussed how we were going to handle damage, whether it's intentional or accidental.
Brian has the plan
Okay.
on all of that.
Brett, can you find that answer
Yep.
out and just let us know?
My experience with handing devices to staff in both Aiken and Foley was very good. Teachers do a really good job keeping
Taking care of them, yeah.
But I will still find that answer out for you.
And that's kind of what you're thinking. Our feeling was, is other districts said it's probably not worth the money on
Yeah.
the teacher.
Any other questions on the lease agreement? Otherwise, a motion to approve the lease agreement?
And just for the sake of, if we were to speed this whole thing up, that doesn't affect us?
No, this is just the staff devices that we're
Right.
buying
I
anyway.
just want to
Yep.
make sure there wasn't kind of like the city.
I don't think so.
Because evidently there's always someone, I mean, it doesn't matter if you missed it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you just make up your own deadline.
Yeah.
Apple typically does not give you a break if you buy more. They don't.
No,
Right.
you won't get a break. I just looking at the lease rate looks a little high from my opinion, but 2.39 seems like we could do better.
But I think part of it is probably you don't have to go through any,
Yeah.
you know, it's their package
Yeah,
deal.
there's
and
no
it's-
other
You
cost
sign the
associated.
papers and it's done and it's.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Lynn,
I'll second.
second by Shannon. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The lease agreement with Apple is approved. Okay, superintendent report.
So I have two items for tonight. One is the enrollment. So I just want to call your attention to where we finished at the end of the school year. We finished very well. So very happy with how we finished enrollment, even with COVID. And then the second part of that is the question Shannon asked earlier is, where are we sitting as far as open enrollment is concerned for going into the next school year? And if you look at the last graph, I think the last graph is, for me, is telling.
What page is that?
90, is it 95?
98.
The last graph, if you look at the last one there, you can see 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, 20, 21. If you go over to June,
We're right
we're,
on.
yeah,
The
we're
last
right
year.
on where we were last year, above where we were 2 years ago and 3 years ago. And you can see that that slope starts dramatically increasing starting in July. So I'm feeling pretty good about where we are as of today and moving forward.
And we've figured out the management of the paperwork and turning in an office so that we sort of have a better timetable as far as the numbers versus sort of.
Are you talking about the system of us knowing when the?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right, the turning in and then getting that.
Did we add
We
days
added
so
to
people were
some
here or
staff.
something?
Yep, so, you know, Roz has still been in the office where she normally would be done by this time of the year, so she's working. And they're communicating with Holly. Holly's updating our spreadsheet constantly. I feel like I'm signing 3 to 4 open enrollments a week typically, so we're keeping very good track of what's going on.
So just from a numbers standpoint, so are we at 63? Am I looking at that right then?
Yep.
And what did we?
That's as of last Thursday.
And what did we say? What do we need to get to our? What was our number? Is it on that? Like
Oh, what did we budget, you mean?
yeah. Did we
Yeah.
budget for 100 of them or?
I'm just trying to quick think about how many.
Would that be in the budget?
Because we were 120.
You
100
answered
and-
this question last time,
Yeah.
last board meeting.
I think it's 120 again.
Yeah,
I think it's very
120
similar
is
to
what I was
last
gonna say.
year's number.
So we're halfway there.
And if you look at the last couple years of trending, so if you went all the way back to the first page, one of the first pages, it shows that we typically see half or more of the enrollment coming in July and August. So
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean we're.
So if that's the case, then we're right on.
if that's the case, we're right on par.
I guess you let us go to 124. I bet we stayed under that.
I bet we did,
120.
There's
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, I'm like,
I'm
I
like, she would
doubt
have
it.
never.
I
There's no
doubt
way
it.
you would have let us go.
That
to
is not
124.
conservative enough.
I think 120 sounds high.
Is that-
I feel like we took the most aggressive
I would have.
enrollment this year. We went all.
If you let us go all here, I'm.
Brad's
We put
got
our
legislative
full gas.
reports. Okay, all right, moving on.
So again, the special session did end this past weekend. I'll save the political comments for some other day, but education bill did pass, HF, or House File 33. So there's just a few updates. One that's, a couple that are significant in special education. In previous years, if you wanted to do just a functional behavior assessment, you actually had to do that within a whole comprehensive evaluation, and a comprehensive evaluation is time. It takes a lot of time and it's money involved in that. And now they've separated that out, so you can have an FBA done. That's what we help our special education. Another thing is that if you were an ATSIS student, so a student, if you were a special education student, you could not also access ATSIS, which is in interventions. And now we changed the law so that you can be in special education and get an extra scoop through our ATSIS. So that's new. There's some fuel contracts. The limits contracts for fuel and transportation to a 10-year, or a term of 10 years. Referendum notice timelines have moved from 30 to 45 days prior to the election. Tier 1 teachers are now going to have to go through the mental illness training similar to a Tier 3 and 4 teacher. Vaping awareness is going to now be in the 6th through 8th grade curriculum someplace. Most typically you'll find that in the health curriculum. And then they made some changes to our pre-K discipline and dismissal. So we'll only under extreme situations will schools be allowed to dismiss a preschooler from their schools, and we'll get in line with the federal government that will say that we do not have to have a birth certificate to enroll in public school. So those are the legislative changes around education.
A quick question about Bruce Miles.
Yes.
And when do we need to get that on our agenda?
I talked to Bruce on Friday. He's ready to go for the fall. So
okay.
Whether or not it's in person or has to be virtual, he's ready to go. I did speak with Greg Johnson, Superintendent Albany, who used Bruce Miles. We were kind of doing it at the same time, and they did the Zoom piece here just a couple weeks ago, and we got some good results from it. So I'm feeling confident that however we do it, we'll get good results.
And as a board, do we want to move forward on that sooner rather than later, or wait till the fall? Or?
I'm open.
I feel like we need to be planning sooner rather than later, because if we actually want to move forward with any sort of referendum,
Yeah.
we
So
need to know what that looks like.
Didn't we talk about don't we need to have the staff meetings also?
Yes, so that's the thing that's holding us back right now, is that he wants 90 minutes with each one of the building staffs, and in order to do that, I would have to have the staffs back on a non-contact day to do that right now.
Right.
I
But
think-
we could get it all planned and
Yeah.
scheduled so
Yeah,
that this is
absolutely,
the
yeah.
date that the staff meetings are
As I say.
taking place, and have it all happening right away. And
That's what he and I talked about on Friday, was the logistics behind
Yeah,
it.
we definitely need to get some dates on the calendar so we can keep moving
Okay.
direction. So, okay, thanks. Board, any other superintendent questions? Board committee updates?
I have an update for community ed. We didn't meet, but an email with a summary of agenda items was sent out to the group. Basically lots of planning from what I see. There wasn't any discussion, but reviewing the preparedness plans for programs that want to use the facilities, figuring out childcare, it looks like, thought around expansion, how to collaborate on providing more options for childcare, early childhood research on what other states are proposing for fall, brainstorming about possibilities for programming, facility rental. It does talk about the GNTC musical, but this was June 10th, and I think that's since been canceled. So each facility user needed to submit a preparedness plan, and then outside spaces being potentially available on June 29th. And then planning around a focus group, again, reaching out to other individuals, organizations within the community to join in the conversation about community ed. Since I have community ed on topic, I know there was a discussion, and I have a question, about potentially there being a deposit from the fund balance or from the general fund, I may be saying this wrong, to subsidize community ed, and and that was gonna be like June 30th, which is next week, and like $58,000. Do we know what that amount actually is going to be?
It's actually gonna be closer to like 120,000. It was like $60,000 more than I budgeted to cover all of the school readiness and ECFE fees that we lost this spring. We lost a third of our fees.
So it's double than what we had agreed to?
And were we just gonna do that, or were we gonna ask that, or?
Say that again?
I said, were we just gonna do that without, I mean, how would we have known that if she went to ask that?
Well, we've talked about it before in previous meetings when we've done the monthly budget, that was gonna happen, and that hopefully the utility savings that we're seeing from this year from having a mild winter and not having buildings occupied was hopefully going to cover all of that.
So we don't know, so that,
that is what I'm planning to do, that our utility savings are gonna go to help cover that part of it, because we chose not to lay off any staff who were being paid through fee-based.
So it
But
wouldn't
that
have
was
to-
based on, I was told it was gonna be, Brad told me it was gonna be $58,000.
So that's the original, that's in the budget. That part of it was already budgeted in the general fund to cover contract settlements. That was in the budget for this year. We're having to do an additional to cover all of the fees that we lost. And then we could potentially use the CARES Act funding that is coming through to replenish that, if that's what we want to use it for.
So how much fees do we typically make? How much revenue do we typically generate from fees?
In school readiness,
It's not 360.
150,
So then how,
150 to 180.
so then where does the 120 come from? So it's not just not generating fees.
No, so there's 60, it wasn't 60, it was like $53,000 that's in the budget right now from general fund to school readiness to cover all those contract increases that they got this year. Things like health insurance benefits, for example, got added this year. When we know that the school readiness fees and ECFE fees, we can't charge enough to cover those kind of rates for teachers.
So in the $120,000, it's fees plus the contract
Yes,
changes?
so it's the budget we already set, plus an additional to cover the fees we're losing of like 16,000.
so, but I'm hearing you say we might not have to use fund balance because there's going to be some savings.
Yes,
Because-
I'm really hopeful that our utility savings are going to cover it, so that we're not affecting where we wanted our unassigned fund balance to be at the end of the year.
We should have seen some of those already, right? I mean, the savings, or is that?
Yeah, so if you look at, for example, like when I presented, when we did our work session last time, we were talking about what the May budget to actual looks like, and I put in the detail on there of utilities that, I budgeted about 700,000 and it's gonna be closer to like 550. So we've got cushion there that's gonna help.
Right, so
with
we
some of
won't
that.
have to
We
use
know-
fund balance
No.
then?
No, and hopefully we won't have to use the CARES Act funding that's coming extra next year.
Well,
we
if
know
it's
what
100,
that
yeah.
is?
The
We know what
CARES Act?
CARES Act funding is.
Yep, so there's two different piles, for lack of a better word, that it's about $225,000 total. Our non-public schools get about 10% of that, so we're left with around $200,000. Part of it has to be technology, which is a small part, about $20,000 for us. The other 180 basically says it can be used for anything that keeps operations going. And we can go back to March 13th.
So could that $180,000 be put toward one-to-one initiative?
That's what we did when we looked at it, how to fund it, we put $150,000 of that
And then
Oh,
it's
and
still.
then
in
you
there.
still have,
and
so
still have a negative 300,000.
Okay.
But I mean, this is something to think about too when we get to this. Like when I get to finally start closing your end here, because yeah, your end is June 30th, but my audit is August 10th. So by August 10th, I'm going to try to have all the books closed and everything done. Depending on how it looks, we might be able to earmark some of our fund balance for technology and then help use that already. Maybe we can get student devices by January 1st then, if it works.
Because this electricity savings, 150 is what you're guessing.
I'm
based on-
hopeful, yeah, I'm hoping utilities are gonna be really,
And so
really
that-
helpful.
But that has to cover the,
Well, it covers, but there, it sounds like there's gonna be a little left there that could
Right.
also then
Yeah.
go into fund balance, that could cover us taking money from fund balance possibly.
Yep, I'm hoping that there'll be some funds that we can earmark for technology already at the end of this year, so that it can be better moving forward.
How do we address the community ed demand though? I mean, there's lower demand, which equals less revenue coming in, which equals more cost, and that's something that, because of the rules that are in place, we can't participate in, but yet we desperately need devices for students. I just feel like it confuses me how the money is being allocated, right? It just doesn't seem like it's being spent on what we actually need right now.
are there
Because
things?
there's like $60,000 we just talked about that,
That was mostly
That was
staff.
part
Staff,
of the
right?
choice from this spring, when we talked about it, and then Brad brought it.
Right, so
Not
that
in-
was,
but
so
so-
we're getting, like, so there was $58,000 that we proactively agreed to.
yeah, that was what we agreed on.
Yep, and
Yep.
now you're saying there's another $60,000 shortfall in revenue.
Yes,
So
because
we have a total of $120,000. 58 we knew,
Yep,
60 we did not.
But the
yep,
CARES Act is in
Tied to
place to
COVID.
cover things like that.
yes,
So-
yes. So potentially we
So,
can take that CARES Act
so
money
there's
and
nothing,
put
you know,
it
we shouldn't
back.
be talking about taking fund balance. I mean, they gave us the
Right.
CARES Act, we decided to pay for that. I think where Jen is going now is moving forward, if we're gonna continue to pay those
Oh,
items and we
subsidizing.
can't collect, yeah, subsidizing, we're not
Thing,
collecting fees.
yeah.
We have to then start looking at how do we reallocate money to where we need to have it. Those are tough decisions, but
Those are hard decisions, but the world
Come
has changed in
July
in what we're
27th.
allowed to do
Right.
and what we actually need. So take those dollars, let's use them for what we desperately need for students, because the things that we're spending money on over here, we're not even allowed to participate in right now.
Right.
so
And may not be for some time. And the participation level, even if the state completely opens up, we aren't even guaranteed that we're
Well,
gonna
it's not-
hit capacity on any of
And
it.
It's never
for
gonna go
come-
back to 100%.
It's not.
I mean, it's gonna take years.
Years.
I mean, that's.
So we're kidding ourselves if we think if we just wait, keep on waiting, it's all gonna go back to normal and we'll go back to where we were before. That is not where we're at. That's not where we're headed.
No, and this fall, if those school readiness classes and ECF classes are not, if people aren't enrolled, if they're not doing them, we do have the ability then to not fulfill teacher assignments. Teacher assignments for those teachers are based on classes and how many people are registering. So there is a way to mitigate costs for next year. Unfortunately, for this last spring, we didn't have the opportunity and we decided that we would
yeah, we made that decision.
keep people on
Right.
and not lay
So
anyone
what
off.
about going forward as far as, for the remainder of this fiscal, or the new fiscal year for the summer, with summer programming? That's all.
Well, right now, summer programming is staffed accordingly to the new participation.
Okay.
So we're.
But we're-
Staffed.
But we're paying all staff. Are we still paying
No.
everybody?
No, the school year is over.
As of
Right,
June.
right.
As
There
of
we
June, yep, as of
Okay.
June 30th, that's,
So come July 1,
Done.
we are only gonna be paying based on,
The staffing for Spartan
And
Spot and any programs that we're running.
it actually started already, June 1st, whatever that Monday was. June
Other
1st,
than-
whatever that Monday was like the end of May, the last day of school was the end of just paying everyone.
so we just did through.
Yeah,
Because they
so-
don't get paid in the summer anyway, right?
No.
Administrators, so other than administrators, everybody is, it's balanced.
Yeah, anybody who is hourly is now getting paid for the actual time they're working. Mm-hmm.
So because it's not fair to talk about it in such a, cold way, are we being transparent with those people about the coming year that, hey, just understand that if we don't have the kids here, we don't have these programs, there's going to be a shortfall in need. And I think, July 27th, we're gonna know a lot more, but we gotta be having those conversations. Our administrators, especially in that envelope, have to be letting those people know, you need to maybe be looking at what's out there, and that's no different than the rest of the world. I mean,
No, it's
that's-
not.
we all have to do it. And so, as long as they understand that, I think we're being completely fair with what possibly could happen.
Well, and we hired an extra community ed person. Now, is that person the idea was they were gonna develop new programs, but we can't be developing programs when we can't.
There's no programs to develop at this
Yeah.
point. For
So
who?
is
Who's
that,
participating?
is that position gonna be looked at? Because what is that person doing?
That person right now has been doing almost all of the work around the COVID preparedness for the
Okay.
activities that are open.
And there could be something, you know, a job for them to find. One of them could be helping to check out computers. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, again, I don't want to keep hammering. There's
Yeah,
a
we
lot.
got wireless needs to go in.
And there's things
not
and
that
there's
hard.
I
people.
don't know if we can install that.
Well, he can help check them out because I heard
Yeah,
that
you
that's.
can, like, you can place them.
Would you like, I mean, you have a bigger hammer over there, you get that nail hit right in here, I got it.
All right, so next time, maybe more detail on the community.
Yeah,
at the
yeah, we
next
gotta stay
meeting.
on top of this before it gets away from us and now the 120 turns to some other number that
But-
is astronomical.
And the transparency is important to me because I've been down that road, but let's make sure they all understand. We're gonna do the best we can to keep as many people as we can.
Okay, Kara, your committees.
I was not able to make the Stearns Family Collaborative review.
Yep.
Can you, do you want to give us an update?
Yep, we approved projects for the next year. So Rocori will enter again in with True Balance to provide the mental health that we have got from them. And they did do a report that we were able during COVID to do a tele. So the people that we have on campus working for us were able to meet with their students via telephone.
Otherwise,
That's
the
it?
committees haven't met.
Okay, Sunny?
My committees have not met.
Facilities and grounds, we got the email today, obviously painting something that's gonna cost a lot of money probably is not gonna happen, but we'll talk about it. I don't know if everybody else saw that there's an email that we had about painting, some extra painting at the school.
In Richmond, it's just,
Yeah.
it was sent out to Kara, Sunny, and you.
Yeah,
I saw it, I didn't have a chance.
anyway, I would guess that probably isn't gonna happen. As far as the other committees, you know, the Booster Club, and again, I just wanna make it really clear, you know, the comments came out of there from some people, and I wanna make sure everybody is very clear. There was some angst that some programs were able to start and some programs weren't, but it was misinformation. You couldn't be in the gym and you couldn't be in the volleyball area. You could only be in the weight room. And the weight room was out there for everybody that wanted to sign up. It was not just a football thing or it was not just a weightlifting thing. It was out there for 9 through 12. And so this isn't really for us, it's for anybody watching. That program, and again, I was super proud of us as a school, and Brad, super proud of you to say, we are gonna do something for our community, and that was for all kids 9 through 12. And there was 100, I was wrong last week, I said 99, there was 140. So 140 kids signed up to be part of that strength training program. Since then, this week, next week now, they can start, this week they were able to start in the gym, doing some basketball and volleyball and some different things, but that only started this week. So there was miscommunication out there because people thought that, you know, some programs were getting extra treatment, and that was not true. So that's Booster Club information, and I'm gonna say the high school league is waiting for MPE.
Okay, Lynn?
None of my committees met that that I attended.
And Benton Stearns for me, I think the big thing was the Handle with Care, that we're gonna be doing Handle with Care starting this fall, so. Which has been a cost savings for but still is a good tool for management of.
The de-escalation.
Yes, yeah,
Continued de-escalation.
so, that was about it from mine. All right, and let's see, that it? No, budget comparison report?
Yep, so that's the same one that we looked at during the work session at the last meeting.
Okay, any questions on that? And then the updated activities, personnel committee meeting today before the meeting, graduation is still scheduled, updated on that. And then we'll be meeting again here going forward through the rest of summer because of the cancellation of the that theater. So, and then once we get more of an idea, like the 27th of July, we'll probably can talk about where we need to meet. But we'll be meeting the next meeting here in the auditorium. So, all right, with that, meeting is adjourned. Thanks.
Thank you.
Can you take like a minute or two?
Sure.